In 1971, the muscle car war was already at full throttle. Big blocks were everywhere. Chevrolet had the LS6, Chrysler had the Hemi, Ford had the Cobra Jet. The battlefield was loud, fast, and brutally competitive. And then, almost quietly, a smaller company stepped in. American Motors, not the name you'd expect to shake Detroit, not the name anyone feared. But what almost nobody knows is, AMC built an engine that didn't just compete with the giants, it embarrassed them. You think you know muscle car history? Not like this. Because the story of AMC's 401 V8 isn't just about horsepower. It's about how an underdog built one of the most brutally effective engines of its era, and why almost nobody saw it coming. By the late 1960s, American Motors Corporation was fighting for survival. They weren't GM, they weren't Ford. They didn't have billions to throw at racing programs or endless engineering teams. They were the fourth largest automaker in America, which sounds impressive, until you realize they were barely holding on to that position. Their market share was shrinking, dealerships were closing, the big three were squeezing them from every angle. They had to be smarter, more efficient, more ruthless with every decision. So when AMC decided to enter the muscle car war, they didn't try to outspend the competition. They tried to outthink it. And that decision led to the development of a V8 engine family that would eventually culminate in the 401. It started with a simple idea: build a lightweight, compact V8 that could still produce serious power. The block itself was cast iron, but thinner and lighter than most competitors. Engineers kept the external dimensions small, which meant it could fit into tighter engine bays, something that gave AMC cars a unique advantage. Where Ford was cramming massive 429s into already tight Mustangs, and Chrysler was struggling with weight distribution on their Hemi cars, AMC had room to work, room to balance, room to engineer proper weight distribution. But there was a catch. Smaller size usually meant less strength, and less strength meant less power. The laws of physics don't negotiate. So how do you build a compact engine that can still compete with big blocks? That was the problem, and what they discovered next changed everything. The AMC V8 architecture used a relatively short deck height and tight bore spacing. By the time the 401 arrived in 1971, it featured a 4.165-inch bore and a 3.68-inch stroke. That gave it a total displacement of 401 cubic inches. Not the biggest engine on the market. Chevy's LS6 was 454 cubic inches. The Hemi was 426. Ford's 429 Cobra Jet was, well, 429. But here's where things got interesting. The shorter stroke meant it could rev more freely than many big blocks. Less piston travel per revolution meant reduced stress at higher RPM. And that mattered, because while other engines were brute force torque monsters, the 401 had balance. It could pull hard and keep pulling. The connecting rods were forged steel, strong, reliable, built to handle stress that would bend lesser components. The crankshaft was a nodular iron casting, not forged like some racing engines, but more than adequate for the power levels AMC was targeting. And here's something most people overlook: the combustion chamber design. AMC engineers shaped the chambers to promote efficient burn and reduce detonation. Wedge-shaped, compact, with valves positioned for optimal flow. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was executed perfectly. Factory compression ratio was rated at 10.2.1 in its early versions. High for the time. Aggressive. Right on the edge of what pump gas could handle. And horsepower? Officially, AMC rated it at 330 horsepower and 430 lb-ft of torque. But those numbers were conservative. Extremely conservative. Most people don't realize this, but during that era, manufacturers often underrated their engines for insurance reasons. Lower advertised horsepower meant lower premiums. Lower premiums meant more buyers. More buyers meant survival. But in reality, the AMC 401 was likely making closer to 350, maybe even 360 horsepower in stock form. And torque? It hit hard, instantly. Peak torque came in low, around 2,800 to 3,000 RPM, which meant neck-snapping acceleration from a standstill. No waiting, no lag, just brutal, immediate response. But there was a problem. On paper, those numbers still didn't sound as impressive as the big names. The LS6 was advertised at 450 horsepower, the Hemi, 425. Even though everyone knew those numbers were inflated, perception still mattered. And perception mattered. So how do you prove your engine belongs? You take it to the streets and the track. AMC dropped the 401 into cars like the AMX and the Javelin. Lightweight bodies, short wheelbases, less bulk than their competitors. The AMX in particular was a revelation, a two-seater muscle car with a 97-inch wheelbase, shorter than a Corvette, lighter than a Camaro, and with the 401 under the hood, absolutely lethal. The weight distribution was nearly perfect. The engine sat low and back in the chassis, keeping the center of gravity exactly where it needed to be. And that combination was dangerous. A 1971 AMC Javelin AMX with a 401 could run the quarter mile in the low 14-second range, right off the showroom floor. With minor tuning, better tires, a carb adjustment, it could dip into the high 13s. Some well-tuned examples even cracked into the 12s. That was serious performance, especially for a company nobody expected to be competitive. Magazine testers were shocked. Car and Driver called it surprisingly quick. Hot Rod said it was a legitimate muscle car, damning with faint praise maybe. But it was respect, and for AMC, respect was rare. But straight-line speed wasn't the whole story, because AMC had something else in mind, Trans Am racing. And this is where things started to get interesting. To compete in Trans Am, AMC needed more than just raw power. They needed durability, consistency, high RPM stability. Because in racing, it's not about who's fastest for a moment, it's about who survives. And early on, the 401 platform showed both promise and weakness. At sustained high RPM, oiling became a concern. Like many V8s of the era, oil delivery to critical components, especially the crankshaft, could become inconsistent under extreme conditions. The problem was windage. As the crankshaft spun at high speed, it whipped the oil in the pan into a froth. Aerated oil doesn't lubricate, it just fails. Oil pressure would drop, bearings would heat up, temperatures would spike. And once that happened, failure wasn't far behind. Engines would come apart in dramatic fashion. Metal in the oil pan, scored journals, complete mechanical chaos, connecting rods punching through the block, crankshafts snapping. It was a nightmare. But AMC didn't have the luxury of starting over. They didn't have time to design a new engine, they had to fix it, and fast. So engineers went back to the fundamentals. They analyzed oil flow, pressure distribution, where the system failed, and why. They installed baffles in the oil pan to control slosh and reduce windage. They modified the oil pump for higher volume at sustained RPM. They revised the oil passages in the block, widening critical channels to ensure consistent flow even under extreme loads. And the solution was both simple and effective. They improved internal oil passages, ensuring more consistent delivery to the crankshaft and valve train under high load. Clearances were tightened. Oil pumps were optimized. Windage trays were added to separate oil from the spinning crankshaft. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't expensive. But it worked. And once those fixes were in place, the 401 transformed. By 1971, AMC was ready to prove something. They entered the Trans Am series with the Javelin, backed by serious engineering and something to prove. They hired the best drivers they could afford. Drivers like Mark Donohue and George Follmer pushed these cars to their limits. Donohue was a legend, a calculating, engineering-minded driver who understood how to extract every ounce of performance from a machine. Follmer was fearless, aggressive, the kind of racer who saw gaps where others saw walls. And the results? They shocked everyone. At the 1971 Trans Am season, AMC didn't just compete, they dominated. The Javelin, powered by AMC's V8 platform, helped secure the championship. Race after race, the little AMC cars battled against factory-backed Mustangs, Camaros, and Challengers, and won. Think about that for a second. A small company, with limited resources, with a fraction of the budget, beating the biggest names in American performance. That wasn't supposed to happen, but it did, and it changed everything. Suddenly, AMC wasn't a joke. They were a threat. Corny. Back on the street, the 401 continued to earn a reputation. It wasn't just fast, it was brutal. The kind of engine that didn't just accelerate, it shoved you back into the seat. Torque came in early, around 3,000 RPM, and stayed strong through the mid-range. It didn't need to scream at 7,000 RPM to make power. It just delivered, relentlessly. The carburetor was a 4-barrel motorcraft or Carter unit, depending on the year. Simple, reliable, easy to tune. The intake manifold was a dual-plane design, optimized for torque and street driving rather than peak horsepower. Headers weren't standard, but bolt-ons were readily available. And with a good set of headers, a performance intake, and a hotter cam, the 401 became a monster. 400 horsepower wasn't difficult to achieve. 450 was within reach. And because of its compact size, AMC cars often had better weight distribution than their competitors. That meant better handling, better balance, more control. Where a Chevelle would plow through corners, the Javelin could carve. Where a Charger felt nose-heavy, the AMX felt planted. So while others focused on straight-line dominance, AMC quietly built something more complete, something more functional. But there was a problem, and this one wasn't mechanical. By the early 1970s, everything was changing. Emissions regulations were tightening. The Clean Air Act was forcing manufacturers to lower compression ratios. Leaded fuel was disappearing, and insurance companies, they were cracking down hard on high-performance cars. Premiums skyrocketed. Young buyers, the core muscle car demographic, were priced out. Suddenly, horsepower wasn't just expensive, it was dangerous to sell. So AMC, like everyone else, had to adapt. Compression ratios dropped. By 1972, the 401's compression fell significantly, and horsepower ratings dropped to around 255 net horsepower under the new measurement system. The old ratings were gross horsepower, measured at the flywheel with no accessories. The new net ratings were more honest, measured with all accessories, exhaust, and emissions equipment in place. On paper, it looked like a massive decline, and for many buyers, that was enough to turn away. But here's the thing most people miss. The engine itself was still strong. The architecture hadn't changed. The block was the same. The internals were still robust. The potential was still there. With minor modifications, camshaft upgrades, intake improvements, exhaust tuning, the 401 could easily regain its lost performance. It was still a beast, just restricted, choked, waiting to be unleashed. Production numbers were never huge. AMC didn't have the scale of GM or Ford. Fewer cars meant fewer engines. In total, only a few thousand 401 equipped cars were built each year, maybe 5,000, maybe 6. Compare that to the tens of thousands of LS6 Chevelles or Hemi Chargers, and over time, that made the 401 something special, rare, underrated, almost forgotten. But among enthusiasts, it developed a reputation. The kind of engine you didn't talk about loudly, but if you knew, you knew. Street racers loved them because nobody expected an AMC to run. And that element of surprise, it won races. Because in the right hands, the AMC 401 could run with anything from its era. And sometimes, beat it. Today, the 401 has become something of a legend. Collectors hunt for original engines. Restorers rebuild them with modern components. Performance builders push them far beyond their original limits. Modern aftermarket support has exploded. You can get forged pistons, performance heads, roller camshafts, fuel injection systems. Everything you need to build a 500 horsepower street engine or a 600 horsepower race motor. The aftermarket finally caught up to what AMC built decades ago. And prices? They've climbed steadily. A good original 401 can fetch thousands. A complete running engine? Even more. A numbers-matching car? You're looking at serious money. Because people are finally realizing what AMC built. Not just an engine, but a statement. A middle finger to the establishment. Proof that you didn't need the biggest budget to compete. You just needed the right engineering, the right vision, and the refusal to quit. In the end, the AMC 401 V8 didn't win with hype. It didn't rely on massive marketing campaigns or flashy numbers. It didn't have celebrity endorsements or Super Bowl commercials. It won by being smarter, more efficient, and brutally effective where it mattered most. It proved that you didn't need to be the biggest name in the game to build something great. You just needed the right idea and the guts to follow it through. AMC took on giants. And for a brief, shining moment, they won. That's what makes the 401 so special. It wasn't supposed to dominate. It wasn't supposed to matter. But it did. And it left a mark that still felt today. Every time someone fires up a restored Javelin. Every time a 401 roars to life at a car show. Every time an old AMC surprises a modern muscle car at a stoplight. That legacy lives on. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments what engine or rivalry you want to see next. And make sure to subscribe because the next story might be even crazier.